Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Decoding the Unknown. This one, the Winchester Mystery House, written by Dave. Thank you, Dave. If you're new to the show, the format is I've never read this before. We're going to read it together. We're going to decode the unknown. We're going to find out whether the Winchester Mystery House is filled with ghosts. Spoiler alert, it's not. I feel like the Winchester Mystery House. Isn't this the one that was just built by some crazy old lady who inherited a gun fortune and then was like, oh my god, our guns have killed so many people. If I don't stop building this house, they're going to come and get me.
Why are you crazy?
And it's another case of like, yo, you don't need to keep building your house. You need to see a doctor. He's going to give you some pills that'll stop you thinking that and you'll be much better afterwards. Anyway, but this is probably back in the day before they had those pills. So the only solution was keep building a crazy house. Let's go.
Let's go!
While growing up, almost everybody will have had a house or a building nearby that was allegedly haunted. Often, I'm just trying to think whether there was something where I grew up which we thought was haunted. Not really. Well, maybe. It's just something I haven't thought about in so long that I've probably forgotten about it. I mean, they were like creepy places, but I don't think anyone thought they were haunted. I remember at school, there was like this old school building, which wasn't really used. Like, just the top floor of it was used. It was on a hill, so you'd kind of enter on the top floor. And then, like at lunchtime, we'd, like, f*** around as kids or whatever. And we went down into, like, the lower levels, and then there were, like, all these bathrooms from, like, 100 years ago, and it was, like, all nasty and shit. We never thought it was haunted. It was just, like, it's an old part of the school. And I don't know, like, abandoned buildings and shit. Yeah, I don't know, they were just abandoned, creepy buildings. They weren't haunted. There were no ghosts. I've always been very skeptical, which it's kind of weird that I now host a show all about this stuff, really. But I mean, this show's just all over it, so yeah, it does fit, doesn't it? Sorry, let's carry on. Often we're one sentence in so far, Simon, and you're 3 minutes into the video. Well done. Picture this, you're surfing the web, you're minding your own business, and suddenly, oh no, you were watching that Netflix series and now you can't anymore because you're in a different location? Maybe you're on holiday? Oh, this happened to me with Mad Men. Was I watching Mad Men on my local Netflix, or maybe I was somewhere else and then I was watching Mad Men on the Netflix there, and then I went home and it stopped working and I was like, oh no, I was in the middle of Mad Men, what happened? Why'd you do this to me? And then I'm like, oh, you know, I got a solution to that. Boom, Surfshark, fire it up. You do have to close Netflix, so just like, you know, I was watching on my phone or my iPad or whatever, just swipe up and then open it again. And Netflix, I guess that I don't want to say like they're not that bright or something, because obviously it's Netflix, they're bright enough, but it opens and you're like, oh, okay, here's all the other content from where you were. Boom. And there's a lot of other content. Like this also I ran into with Tom Cruise movies. I went through this stage, I think I was watching all of the Mission Impossibles, and they weren't on my local Netflix. So I just went over to like Netflix, my Surfshark Miami server or whatever, and it's like, hello. Or maybe it's the other way around. Whatever. Look. What I'm trying to say is that if you are somewhere, you can go somewhere else using Surfshark, and it's not just Netflix, it's the other ones as well, and then boom, suddenly you've got a whole new content library. Plus, you can shield your online activities, keeping them private and secure. Your ISP, they see everything. You're using that incognito window on Chrome and you're like, no one can see what I'm up to. But they can. Your ISP can. That's your internet service provider. That's, I don't know, Vodafone or whoever. They're like, hello, we see you. We see you. But you know how they don't see you? If you use Surfshark, which you should. It's also super cheap. Plus, you can stay safe on public Wi-Fi, not just protecting your privacy, but also protecting you from hackers. Like, let's say you're in a coffee shop using that dodgy Wi-Fi. There's this thing called a honeypot, where there's some dude, like let's say he's in Starbucks or whatever, and you're like, oh, Starbucks free Wi-Fi, but it's not Starbucks, it's some dude, probably a shady looking dude in the corner, and he's setting up his own Wi-Fi thing called free Starbucks, and he's just stealing all your data. Use Surfshark to protect yourself against, you know, dodgy dude in the corner of Starbucks pretending to be Starbucks Wi-Fi or whatever. Stuff like that, you know, that's what Surfshark's for. I'm sorry, this ad read's getting really long because I talk about all the ways I use Surfshark rather than read their copy points. Anyway. Okay, what's the deal? I have to read this one. Surfshark.deals/DTU. Enter the promo code DTU and get 83% off and 3 extra months for free. They should just say 17% on, shouldn't they? Because it's very cheap. It's very, or I should say it's very affordable or whatever, because cheap makes it sound bad when it's incredible. It's very easy to use. It keeps you protected. Go check it out. There's a link below. And now back to today's episode. Often a house needs only to stand unoccupied for a couple of weeks before the imaginations of the local children fill it with ghosts, strange happenings, or stories of gruesome murders. For me, growing up in the town of Havant just outside of Portsmouth, the local haunted building was a place known as Racken's Monument, built hundreds of years ago by a local landowner so that he might see the trade ships coming into port before anybody else. The now completely gutted tower became a somewhat eerie location where my friends and I would dare each other to use Ouija boards, scale the incredibly unstable walls, and during our teenage years experiment with various hallucinogenic chemicals, allegedly. Yeah, I mean, I've never used a Ouija board. I guess I did think as a kid that this stuff was real because your first coming across these is always going to be like, yeah, it's real. And then no one's there to tell you, like, it's not real. You find that out later. So I guess at some point I did think that Ouija boards were real. I did think that there was such a thing as spells. But I was disabused of those notions fairly quickly when it's like, I've put a spell on you, Simon. And it's like, okay. Oh my God, I'm scared. And then nothing happens because of course it doesn't, because spells aren't real. Although the structure is now fenced off due to fears of its imminent collapse, I believe it's still fairly popular among teenagers despite undoubtedly being a great source of entertainment. This pile of old rocks pales in comparison to the subject of today's video, so without further rambling, let us take a look into the fascinating story behind the Winchester Mystery House. A few years ago, some place I used to go to got fenced off, but it wasn't like a haunted thing, it was an awesome quarry which someone had filled with water. I don't know who. Like, someone filled it with water. It probably just filled with water over time. But it was this beautiful quarry with these huge cliffs that you could jump off into the water. They must have been like, what's a top diving board? Like 5 meters, 10 meters? It was at least triple that height. Like, it was a proper drop that would hurt your feet when you went into the water. And it was awesome, just jumping off these cliffs into the water that was super deep and then, swimming and doing it all over again. And obviously, whoever owned the quarry fenced it off. And I was like, oh no! Because it was extremely dangerous. Anyway, our story begins with an incredibly wealthy individual. William Wirt Winchester was the heir to the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, and as such was certainly not buying store-brand cereal. Is that how you measure wealth, Dave? You go to someone's house and it's like, oh, look at you with your Kellogg's. Mr. Fancy Pants, did you drop your monocle? Unfortunately, money isn't everything, and although he was able to marry the love of his life, Sarah L. Pardee, their only child would pass away due to illness at only 6 weeks old. William would continue to work as treasurer for his father's company until taking over in 1880 following the death of his father. William himself would die of tuberculosis 1 year later, leaving a not inconsiderable fortune to his widow. According to reports, this fortune was valued at about $20 million back in the day. In 1880, oh good lord, that is a lot of money today. Adjusting for inflation, that works at about $500 million. I'm honestly surprised it's not more. On top of that, she also inherited 50% of the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, making her one of the richest women in the world. So, just what would she do with all that money? Well, that's an interesting question. The best-known version of the story of Sarah Winchester is indeed an interesting one and contains ghosts, messages from the afterlife, a mysterious medium, and a convoluted attempt to prevent spiritual retribution. But how much of it is actually true? Wait, what did we list? Ghosts, messages from the afterlife, a mysterious medium, a convoluted attempt to prevent spiritual retribution. Well, half of that could be real. Because you could have a mysterious medium and a convoluted attempt to prevent spiritual retribution. I mean, spiritual retribution and mediums are not real. I mean, someone could say they're a medium, but it doesn't mean they don't have any actual supernatural ability. So I'm just going to say that none of it's true.
Yes, Queen! Yes, Queen!
Let us hear first, if not the official story, then the version that most people have come to believe. Upon the death of her husband, Sarah had absolutely no idea as to how she should spend the rest of her life or her newly acquired wealth. Well, her newly acquired wealth? She was married to the dude. It's not like he's just living some gangster-ass lifestyle and she's just living in... She's like, well, I didn't bring anything to this any money to this marriage, so I guess I'll just live like a peasant while you live like a king. It's like, no, you're both rich. That's the deal with marriage. So she did what all of us would have done in her situation. She asked her husband, oh no. She's like, I don't know what to do with all this money you left me. And he's like, from the great beyond, really? That's what you wanted to ask me about? It's not like, oh, I love you, dear. It's like, financial advice? Really? We have people for that, wife. Through the use of a medium in Boston named Adam Coons, she was able to connect with William, in spite of the fact that mediumship had been proven time and time again to be absolute. He told her that she must leave her home in Connecticut and move to California. Jesus, where is Connecticut? I feel like that's one of those, like, thousands of states. You know, like most of America, you look at that map of America and you got, you know, big states, Texas, California, and then you go to the Northeast and it's all like, they're all tiny and shoved in that corner. I swear like half of them are up there. I feel that that's where Connecticut is, but I'm not sure. So he's like, yeah, move all the way across the country in 1880. It's a long journey. And California is like nice today, right? But it's probably a bit in 1880. Was there anything going on, or was it just a bunch of like gold prospectors like digging up mountains? Upon my knowledge of American history, as you can tell, top-notch stuff.
I am too smart. I am too smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-T.
Upon arrival, she must construct a home for the souls of every individual who has been killed by a Winchester rifle. Should she fail to do this, then she'd be haunted by the souls for the rest of her existence. It wouldn't surprise me if Adam Coons is like, yeah. And while you're out in California, I just happen to know a contractor who does a bang-up job. If you're looking for somebody, his name is my brother. People were obviously more gullible back then because this is apparently exactly what she did. No, Dave, people are not less gullible. People still believe in mediums, and now we have like real science. Like back in the 1880s, they had like early science. They had science, but they were like, okay, yeah, sure. And now we have real science, and people are still like, okay, yeah, sure. It's like, what's going on? Why are we still stupid?
You are made of stupid.
I don't know. I'm not. Let's come on. Purchasing an incomplete farmhouse, she immediately set about building a truly bizarre home. Although she spared no expense when it came to luxuries, installing things like push-button gas lighting, hot air heating, and running hot water, some of the architectural aspects of the home were, shall we say, somewhat unusual. I love it when you like compare. So this woman is like one of the richest women in the world. And she's like, well, what do you have? Well, I have lights that switch on with a button. I've got hot air running through the house. Oh, guess what? Running hot water. It's like your regular ass house or apartment that you live in that's a bit is better and has better facilities than what someone in the 1880s had, who was one of the richest people in the world. It reminds me of Howard Hughes. Like back in the 60s or whenever he was kicking around, he owned like a TV station that would broadcast, you know, it was like broadcasting movies or whatever, just so that he could sit in his hotel penthouse and turn on the TV and watch what he wanted to watch.
Nice.
And if they weren't playing something he enjoyed, he'd phone up the TV station and be like, yo, change the movie. And so people would be watching this channel and the movie would just change because Howard was like, I want to watch something different. And what my point is he had something worse than Netflix in the night, way worse than Netflix in the 1960s. And he was like the richest man in the world or whatever. And now you have something better than that for like $8 a month or whatever Netflix costs. Living in the future is amazing. Although the original structure consisted of only 2 floors, Sarah quickly set about having 5 more built on top of it, employing a team of builders and carpenters to work around the clock. She had more and more bizarre features added to this unusual abode. According to a friend of mine who has visited the property, or at least what remains of it today, it really is peculiar. I've made videos about this before, obviously, because I've made like thousands of YouTube videos. I think I've probably done at least 2 or 3, so I have some vague idea of this story. But I've never been. I'd love to go. There are staircases that lead nowhere, doors that open onto blank walls, and due to the fact that the rooms were added onto exterior walls, several rooms have windows that instead of displaying views of the outside, simply look into other rooms. Some of these windows are masterpieces in their own right. Being a huge fan of stained glass, Sarah even went as far as to have bespoke pieces made by some of the most exclusive and expensive designers around. Well, there's one thing I know that I have in common with Sarah. It's like I'm renovating. There was a post on the subreddit. You can go to reddit.com/r/Simon Whistler to see the subreddit, and there was like a pool going on about when Simon's moving into his house that he's been renovating. It's been like, I bought the house nearly 2 years ago. It's insane. It's to be fair, construction hasn't been going on that long because you have to get all this permission, like, because it's like a protected the buildings, I don't think the buildings, or the outside of the building is protected, so yeah, and then the structure of the building, so you have to get like permission to, oh, you want to knock down a chimney, huh? Well, that's going to take a year of permission. And then also the area, so I'm trying not to give away too much about where I live. This is all very generic, right? And it's like, we had to wait a year and a half, basically, to get permissions to do stuff. We're still waiting on some permissions to go through. But my whole point with this is that this is a really good way to spend money. Like, I get a devastating bill every month from the builder. And it's like, oh my lord, how? How?
How the hell?
And I'm not putting in like elaborate stained glass windows. This will burn through your money. Although she has a lot more money than me. The more expensive of these windows, designed by the Tiffany company. Oh my god, that's going to be expensive. And something that you might think would have been installed in a prime location to take advantage of natural light is instead mounted on an internal wall where absolutely no sunlight will ever shine through it. But it was not just weird window placement that Sarah was into. Apart from the staircase that leads nowhere, many of the other staircases contained within the building have unusually shallow rises, or in some cases were constructed with rises of mixed heights, which I imagine made the staircases almost impossible to navigate with any degree of certainty. I'll call those the drunk staircases. You know when you're drunk and you're like, oh no, I misjudged a step and fell over. Like, really drunk. It's like, I have to say, sometimes it's not even really drunk, but it's like, I have a tendency, I will bound upstairs. Like, I'll take 2 or 3 stairs at a time, just as my default way of climbing stairs. And it's like, after a few beers, you should be like, just go climb stairs like a regular person, whistle boy. Because you're like, oh. But if I were in a house, I'd call these the drunken stairs, because you'd just be going up to bed like dead sober and you'd be tripping over yourself and go, oh, for God's sake, who designed these stairs, Sarah? Why?
Huh? Why not?
In addition to structural oddities, the house also contains an unusual number of trapdoors, secret passages that don't go anywhere, and a door on the second floor, which when opened reveals an unguarded drop straight down to the courtyard below. Putting in a secret passage would be cool. I haven't put any secret passages in my house, which I'm now regretting. I saw there's this great YouTuber called Colin Furs, which is like so far outside of anything I create, but he's very popular. I've actually met him, but it's like he does this thing. He like does these crazy builds. He dug a tunnel like under his garage, which goes to his under his garden that connects his house and his garage. And I'm like, that is sick. I'd love something like that, so maybe I'll do that. The idea that I could ever get permission to do this is just a joke, so I'm not ever going to do that. In addition to these... And he built it himself, by the way, this Colin dude.
Wow. Yeah.
But perhaps the most unusual feature of the Winchester Mystery House, and the one that is most often talked about when it comes to spiritual involvement, is the bell tower. The majority of people who believe this version of the story claim that Sarah used the bell in this tower to summon spirits for her nightly communications with the dead. This brings us to the part of the story which allegedly explains Sarah's unusual choices when it comes to home decor, architecture, and the placement of doors, which, should you accidentally walk through them during the night while sleepily looking for the bathroom, would result in death or serious injury. Sorry, I know we got a lot of tangents today. But the other day, I just woke up in the middle of the night, turning my bedroom light on, and my wife's like, what's going on? And I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, you were just looking through the drawers, and then you turned on the light. And I'm like, I have no memory of this. And this is, I think, the 3rd or 4th time I've sleptwalked in my entire life. I'm like, okay. It's so weird. It's so disorientating. Just turning on the light and being woken up, being like, why am I standing and what am I doing? What was I looking for? It's the middle of the night.
Hey, what happened?
Once there, she would ring the bell and while away the evening talking to the victims of Winchester rifles in order to ensure that the house she was constructing for them met with their approval. Presumably, something must have been lost in translation. Either that or the spirits got sick and tired of being summoned every night, because in 1906, the Great San Francisco earthquake caused the bell tower and the top 3 stories of the house to collapse. Oh my lord, that sounds terrifying. Allegedly, Sarah took this as a sign that the spirits were royally pissed off, and work on these areas immediately ceased. By the time Sarah passed away in 1922, rumors about the strange house and even stranger inhabitant had spread across the state. So what happened next? This would have spread across the world if it was 2022, because the internet. And now it has. So what happened next? Did Sarah, in a final bid to appease the fallen, leave the now badly damaged property to the spirits? Well, depending on how you look at it, sort of. Although she left a large chunk of her fortune along with all of her personal belongings to her niece Marion, who towards the end of her life had served as her personal secretary, as well as moving into the house to provide support and company, the actual house itself was not mentioned in her will. This, of course, has led people to speculate endlessly on what exactly she planned for the future of her ongoing project. As her only surviving relative, it appears that her niece inherited the property anyway. For some reason, she had no particular interest in continuing to live there and seemed to be particularly keen on getting rid of it. Probably because she's like, oh, the f***ing drunk stairs. I have hurt my knees so many times. You're crazy Aunt Sarah making this mental house. Unfortunately, due to its peculiar design and the fact that it was now in an advanced state of disrepair, appraisers deemed the house to be almost worthless, and Marion was forced to sell it at auction. After the house was completely emptied, a process which it had been claimed took more than 6 weeks. Oh my lord. Like, normal house is like a day. My parents recently moved house, and it was like the people came in, they took all the stuff, took them to the new house. It was a day. It's like a day's process. A local investor was finally able to secure the property for £135,000. Dollars, sorry. This equates to approximately $2 million, give or take $1 or $2. Well, actually, Dave actually gave me the specific amount of $2,047,700.25.
What?
Which I just rounded up when I was reading to $2 million. So, actually, give or take $1 or $47,725. Just 5 months after the death of Sarah Winchester, the property, which for whatever reason had been her life's work, was open to the public so that they could get a look at the place where the crazy old ghost lady had lived. Dave, you're right there for whatever reason. I can tell you the reason, and it's profit. Because that local investor saw that property and was like, I can make this into a tourist attraction. It's only going to cost me 135 grand. Bada bing, bada boom. Even though the house had been completely emptied, rumors continued to circulate about a hidden attic room which allegedly contained the most rare and expensive items in Sarah's collection. As the old saying goes, even politicians tell the truth occasionally, if only by accident, and in 2016, this rumor was partially confirmed. We're talking like 100 years later! A secret attic was indeed discovered, and according to one news article, it contained a pump organ, a Victorian-era couch, a dress form, a sewing machine, and various paintings. Hardly inconceivable riches. I don't know, Dave. It depends what those various paintings was. What was it? It's a Picasso, and a Degas. Ooh, money.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Hardly inconceivable riches, but proof that the house did still contain at least one mystery. The story of Sarah Winchester and her interesting house has become somewhat legendary over the years, and not only have countless people been paid to walk around inside it, but it has become a topic of interest for both ghost enthusiasts and skeptics alike. Even the legendary skeptic Harry Houdini visited the property. He's like, yeah, cool architect. It's like, I want to visit this property. I find it fascinating, like all these crazy staircases and stuff. You know what I don't find interesting about it? Ghosts, because they're not there. You're going to see the crazy architecture and see what the crazy ghost lady built. Not for ghosts themselves. While he was in the area as part of a lecture tour, he met with somebody who worked as a tour guide at the house and was taken there for a midnight visit. Although the Winchester Mystery House Facebook page claims that he left with more questions than answers and famously suggested that the name The Mystery House should be used, in actual fact it appears that he visited the place more out of curiosity and really expended no effort in further debunking the lies told by mediums anywhere ever. And so, that's it. The sad story of a grief-stricken, gullible rich lady who was deceived by an unscrupulous bastard into wasting the majority of her life. A story which was capitalized upon by a rich investor whose descendants still profit from this capitalization to this day. I'm such a capitalist. I'm like, yeah, so what, Dave?
I said what I said,
As
and
always.
I'm not changing on it, okay? I said what I said.
I'm like, as they should, Dave. He made a good business decision, and now his children's children are wealthy, Dave. What's wrong with that? I understand what's wrong with that. Or is it? There is another version of this story, a version which, although tinged with tragedy, certainly makes a lot more sense and doesn't contain any ghosts whatsoever. And that's the version of the story which I'll tell you now. It's also the version of the story that I've been talking about forever. She's just a crazy lady who built a crazy house. Be warned that this version of the story contains some actual evidence, so if you're dead set on believing the first version, then now might be the time to stop watching or listening. Dave, no. Keep watching, keep listening. I need the watch time. Are you insane? Watch to the end and then watch it again. Maybe watch it in half speed. Come on. The beginning of the story, at least, is pretty much the same as the previous version. Sarah grew up on the same street as William. They fell in love at an early age, had a baby that passed away at the age of 6 weeks old, and William would pass away at a fairly young age, leaving his wife, Sarah, not an inconsiderable fortune. However, not an inconsiderable fortune. That's $500 million in today's money, Dave. Jesus. So how rich are you? Not inconceivably rich. It's like $500 million is fairly inconceivably rich. Can you conceive $500 million? I think that's the stage. It's so much money that you don't really understand it, right? Like, how many Big Macs is that? $500 million? I don't know why I always think of Big Macs. It's because of that Big Mac index, that tells you how expensive Big Macs are around the world. Also, I know a Big Mac's a lot more than $1. How much is a Big Mac? $2-3 bucks? How much is it? 100 crowns? 200 crowns? 100 something crowns? It's like $3, $4.
The Big Mac.
However, from here, the story is slightly different. Depending on how many tangents Simon has gone off on by this point, it's been many today, I'm sorry. I actually saw that this episode was a bit shorter than normal, so I was like, excellent, an excuse for tangents. You should have no problem remembering that Sarah is alleged to have consulted a medium shortly after the death of her husband. Many retellings of this story name the medium as Adam Coons, but as far as record indicates, no such person existed anywhere at the time. Continuing with parts of the story that have no historical evidence to back them up, I was unable to find a single shred of evidence that suggests she in any way believed the ghosts of those killed by Winchester repeating rifles were interested in her at all. Oh, I really thought that's why she built all the crazy rooms and stuff. I thought that part of the story was true. It's perhaps worth noting at this point that even if she had consulted with some sort of medium, this would not have been considered unusual behavior for the time. This particular brand of pseudoscience was relatively new, or at least the mass-produced, financially and emotionally exploitative version of it was. As such, many people with time and money on their hands were eager to give it a go. Do most mediums know it's a scam? They must, right? If you're a medium who's actually reasonable at stuff, then you must know that you have to, do the cold reading and stuff where you're like, okay, so this person said this, they did this, I could try with this. It's a very... For something that the other person sitting across from you has no logical strand in their fiber of their being. But you as the medium, as an actual good medium, have to be insanely logical, like Sherlock Holmes logical, to be able to pull the story together to make the person believe that you are able to talk to their dead relatives, right? So any good medium must know that they are a fraud, which... Isn't this just mind-blowing to other people that these people are out there and they do this and they scam people and everyone's just like, yay, hey, it is what it is, hey. Whereas if you were doing some financial scam or something, you'd be you and Bernie Madoff would be hanging out. Why is that okay? Why are we allowed to, what's going on?
Why?
And let's not even get into religion and tithing, because that is a whole other issue. As such, many people with time and money on their hands were eager to give it a go. If you think about it for a second, this isn't ridiculously surprising. When William passed away in 1881, the Civil War was still relatively fresh in the memory of most Americans. Pretty much every family had lost at least one person during the conflict. Is that statistically true? That's wild. And it is perhaps not surprising that people may have begun to lose some of their faith in that other method of emotional and financial extortion, organized religion. Bang on, Dave. Nor is it surprising that when offered the opportunity to say goodbye to their lost parents, husbands, or sons, many people jumped at the opportunity without being as skeptical as they ordinarily might have been. In any case, consulting a medium was not at all something that you would have been branded as an oddball by doing, as many tellers of this story would have you believe. And anyway, let's move on. The next part of our story also contains a grain of truth. Sarah did indeed decide that the life of a rich widow in New Haven, Connecticut was not for her, and decided to move, along with her sisters and a few other relatives, to California. It's believed that she actually did this in order to make a completely fresh start, rather than because she was instructed to do so by her dead husbands. The next part of the story is also true. She did in fact purchase the former farmhouse, complete with a huge amount of land. However, her most likely reasons for choosing this particular property require a quick jump backwards in time to explain. Okay then. After the death of their daughter, Sarah and William were understandably completely devastated. Nothing quite compares to the loss of a baby. Trust me, I've been there. Oh my god, Dave, that just got unbelievably dark. I'm so sorry. Whoa. Okay. Whoa. Whoa. Dude. Far from being able to move on with their lives, the couple began to isolate themselves from the world. I can't get over that, Dave. Dave, you can't just do that to me. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's so insane. Wow. It was not until they eventually took over managing the family's vast property portfolio that Sarah found something in which she could pour her energy. This thing turned out to be property renovation and interior design. With her husband now gone, it makes sense that she might fall back on the very same thing that had saved her from the brink in the past. It certainly makes more sense than the allegedly made-up quote that I came across while researching this script. The writer claims this quote comes directly from a newspaper article written about an interview given by Sarah, and reads, "When I saw the mystery house, I knew that it was the one. The insistent clamor of voices in my head that had plagued me since I first spoke with Adam fell silent, and I was struck by an overwhelming sense of euphoria." Now, there are many things wrong with this, but let's now just look into two. As previously mentioned, there is no evidence that Adam ever existed, let alone evidence that he and Sarah were on first-name terms. In addition, Sarah never actually referred to her property as the Mystery House. Why would she? It was not a mystery to her. The name really only became popular after her death. The only reason I'm including this quote at all is that it's an excellent example of just how much stuff people have made up on the spot in order to make the story more sensational than it was. As always with this Decoding the Unknowns, right? It's always this profit-driven stuff. It's like, yeah, the guy bought it for $2 million dollars in today's money or whatever. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to profit off it. And if we name it the Mystery House and make up some cool stories, more people are going to come. Money, everybody. Incidentally, though I looked for nearly 2 hours, I wasn't able to find any evidence of the original article existing at all. Although Sarah developed a passion for interior design, she was by no means an architect, and for this reason... Look, Sarah, she was by no means an architect. It's like, maybe the stairs should be even, or people are going to call these the drunk stairs, aren't they? Maybe that door should go somewhere. Maybe that Tiffany window... the thing that I've spent like millions on. Maybe that should be in the light. I'm not an interior designer, and I know this. And for this reason, there was no master blueprint to how this house should look when it was finished. In fact, it is doubtful whether or not Sarah really had an end goal in mind, although I don't believe any of the claims that she was building the house to either confuse or appease vengeful spirits. Many of the design choices do, at first glance, appear to be somewhat unusual. But if you take the time to do a little bit of research, many of them begin to make a lot more sense. For example, the staircases with incredibly low rises. As Sarah aged, she suffered terribly from arthritis, and climbing a normal flight of stairs was an arduous, painful undertaking. For most people, this is just something that you have to learn to live with, but Sarah wasn't most people. Well, don't most people get a stair lift? Or something like that? Or an elevator? A lift? Like... That's what I have, right? My grandma had one of those. Take her up the stairs. And then after a while, she just lived downstairs because, I don't know, stair lift sounds like a hassle, doesn't it? And they had a big enough house. I think they just moved the bedroom downstairs at some point. As I previously mentioned, she was, at that point, one of the richest women in the world. And although she had several elevators installed in the property, why would she not think it's a good idea to design a staircase that she could ascend with relative ease? I don't know, maybe because she's got elevators. It may have been a bit of a pain in the ass for anybody else who was trying to go upstairs, but it was her house and she spent a large amount of time living in it on her own. That is, on her own apart from her veritable army of builders. Let's take a look at another of the supposedly strange and creepy features of the house, the selection of trapdoors that can be found in various locations. Far from being some sort of ghost traps or access points for hidden rooms, people have looked into this much harder than I have and identified these as access hatches for a rather spiffy water conservation system. According to the video on the This House YouTube channel, quote, even with more money than she could spend in a lifetime doing whatever she wanted, conservation was important to her. She created a water runoff system in her house resembling trapdoors. Any excess water from her indoor plants would travel through a series of pipes to help water their outdoor garden. Oh my god, that's incredibly elaborate. And also, do plants have excess water? In my house, we just have those little pots, you know, the little trays that they sit in, and then the water goes into there, and then the plant just absorbs it and uses it. Is there much runoff from indoor plants? What about the staircases that led nowhere and the doors that opened onto bricked up walls? Well, there are a couple of explanations for these. First, and this is important, although Sarah Winchester probably wasn't an insane ghost botherer, she certainly was eccentric. If a room that he had envisioned did not live up to her expectations in reality, she was not above of having the whole thing ripped out and redone. Yeah, this isn't so surprising. Like, there are bricked up... I mean, we take the door... There's like doors in this house renovation. It's like downstairs... We just like rejigged the interior a bit and put a door on one side and then bricked up the other door. But it's like, you can still see where the door was because it's kind of inset, and it's like that'll be turned into a cupboard or whatever with a door on it. And you could easily be like, oh, that's crazy. It's like, no, it's just what happens during renovations, isn't it? What are you talking about? Additionally, many rooms were simply added onto the outside of the building, and if these additions covered up a doorway or two, then she didn't seem overly bothered. That, at least, is a partial explanation. The rest of the explanation is far more simple. It's already pretty simple. I'm like, okay, so she was just an eccentric woman building a big old house. When the house sustained serious damage during the aforementioned earthquake of 1906, much of the building became structurally unsafe. Rather than everything rebuilt, Sarah elected to simply save as much of the house as possible and wall off the sections that could not be saved. It's like, yeah, no one goes in the east wing anymore. It was damaged in the earthquake. Just don't go in there. It's just not what it's just abandoned. Weird. As several floors had to be removed, a staircase that leads to nowhere is not unusual at all. Well, it is a bit weird, isn't it? Like, if you remove the top floor to your house, you'll generally be like, well, we removed the whole top floor to the house. You should remove the staircase as well. I swear I went to a house once that had a staircase that led to nowhere. Like when I was looking at houses to buy.
Let's do it.
There was a house I went to. Was this a dream? It was really weird now. Now I'm doubting myself. Oh no, it was. There was like it was like at some point someone had put in a different staircase on the other side of the house. And so the old staircase was kind of in this cupboard. It was though they'd turned the old hallway into a series of cupboards, but they'd left the staircases in there, which led to nowhere, and they were just using them as shelves. So strange. This brings us to perhaps the most interesting question about Sarah and her house. If she was nothing more than a fabulously rich eccentric engaged in a constant battle for perfection, where did the stories that really made the house famous come from? While some of them were undoubtedly started by locals who didn't really approve of a financially independent woman doing whatever the hell she wanted, either that or they simply invented interesting reasons why the lady down the road had builders working 24 hours a day for several decades, which must have been annoying, the main reason why these stories were picked up and ran with appears to be one of potential financial gain. Although the house was bought at auction by an investor, it was quickly leased and eventually sold to a couple called John and Mamie Brown. Mame Brown? Someone? The Browns originally planned to build some sort of roller coaster on the grounds, okay, but quickly realized that there was far more money to be made in charging people for tours. Although the house itself probably would have been enough to draw in tourists simply because of its incredibly unique construction, the Browns allegedly leaned heavily on the haunted mansion built by a spiritually tormented crazy lady angle. Yes, and why wouldn't you? Like, I don't believe in any of this but if I owned this building, I'd be like, yeah, it's haunted by so many ghosts, more ghosts than anywhere else. I've seen them all. Please pay me.
They would have to pay me.
Some people have even gone so far as to accuse the Browns of not only inventing the entire story about both the medium and the spirits, but also carrying out their own modifications on the property to make it look like Sarah had been fixated on the number 13. I really wish that I'd been able to find more evidence to support this theory, as it certainly makes more sense than the original story. However, I could find nothing more concrete than a few articles and videos containing accusations. In fact, the entire research project for the script has been a little bit like that. Never before have I researched something on which so much has been written based on so little hard evidence, which is unusual because this is Decoding the Unknown, where a lot is written on not a lot of evidence. Sort of like the History Channel's Ancient Aliens, allegedly. Having said that, if we take the time-honored theory of motive, means, and opportunity combined with the complete lack of any evidence at all to back up the now widely publicized story, then the Browns do start to look somewhat guilty. Yeah, I'm like, cool though. That's fine. They had good reason to do this. Their reason being money. However, this is purely conjecture on my part and certainly would not stand up in a court of law, if indeed a crime has ever been committed. There's no crime. It's just like, yeah, there's a cool story around our house. It's a story. Relax, come see the ghosts. It's fine. And so, as always, I shall leave it up to you, the viewers, to draw your own conclusions. I've done my best to collate such facts as they are on the topic, and I've personally drawn the following conclusions. In all probability, Sarah Winchester, after losing not only her child, her husband, and her father-in-law in quick succession, but also a number of other close family members, poured her heart and soul into her one remaining passion. Did that passion become an unhealthy obsession? Yes, almost definitely. Or were there things about her that were slightly unusual? Sure. Did she, in fact, spend approximately 30 years of her life attempting to build a house to appease the angry spirits of everybody who was ever killed by a Winchester repeating rifle? No, almost definitely not. And you and I, Dave, are on absolutely the same page about this. And that's where we end today's episode. Thank you so much for being here.